Nike, Adidas, scrambling. A teenage tennis star nobody saw coming just broke the sports marketing game wide open. Alex Eala's merchandise didn't just sell. It caused a frenzy that left billion-dollar brands in absolute chaos. 3 days, that's all it took for her signature gear to outsell established champions. And now the biggest names in sportswear are fighting over a player most casual fans had never even heard of. What happened? And why are corporate boardrooms panicking over a girl from the Philippines? Nobody predicted this. Not the analysts. Not the marketing executives. Certainly not the sports brands, who've spent decades perfecting the formula for identifying the next superstar. Alex Eala wasn't supposed to be the one who broke the internet. She wasn't a Grand Slam champion. She hadn't defeated Sviatek or Sabalenka in a dramatic final. She was a talented young player climbing the ranks, showing promise, turning heads with her aggressive baseline game and fearless attitude on court. But merchandise phenomenon. That wasn't in anyone's playbook. It started innocently enough. Eala posted a simple photo on Instagram, wearing a custom-designed training outfit. Nothing extravagant, just a sleek combination of her favorite colors with a subtle Philippine flag motif. The caption was humble, almost casual. Ready for the grind? Let's do this. Within hours, the comment section exploded. Fans weren't just liking the post, they were demanding to know where they could buy the outfit. E-commerce sites crashed. Small retailers who had stocked limited quantities of Eala-branded gear saw their inventory disappear before lunch. The initial wave came from the Philippines, which made sense. Eala was a national treasure, the country's brightest tennis hope in generations. Filipino fans had been starving for a tennis icon they could call their own. Someone who represented their struggles, their dreams, their underdog spirit on the global stage. But what happened next defied all conventional marketing logic. The demand spread: Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam. Across Southeast Asia, young fans were suddenly clamoring for anything associated with Alex Eala. Her headbands, her wristbands, her training shoes. Items that had been sitting in warehouses for months were now selling out in minutes. Sports retailers were baffled. One store manager in Manila described the scene as absolute madness. People were lining up before dawn. Online checkout systems were timing out from the traffic. Resellers were buying bulk quantities and flipping them for triple the price on secondary markets. This wasn't normal fan behavior. This was something else entirely, a cultural moment disguised as a shopping spree. And here's what made it truly extraordinary. Alex Eala didn't even have a major endorsement deal yet. Most of her gear was generic, occasionally customized by smaller regional brands, trying to build relationships with rising players. There was no Nike swoosh, no Adidas 3 stripes, no massive marketing campaign, pushing her image across billboards and streaming platforms. This was organic. This was real. And that's precisely what terrified the major sports brands. Because if a relatively unknown player could generate this kind of commercial hysteria without their involvement, what did that say about their ability to predict and control the market? The sports marketing world operates on certainty. Brands invest millions in athletes because they can forecast returns, measure engagement, calculate risk. They have algorithms, historical data, focus groups. But Alex Eala broke the algorithm. She represented something those spreadsheets couldn't quantify: authenticity, regional pride, the hunger of an underserved market, finally seeing themselves represented. And when the sales numbers from that first week were finally compiled, executives at Nike, Adidas, and every other major brand had the same reaction: absolute disbelief, followed immediately by panic, because they'd missed it, completely missed it. And now they were playing catch-up in a game where being second means you've already lost. But the real shock was still coming, because when the full sales data went public, it revealed something nobody was prepared for. The leaked sales report landed like a bomb in the sports marketing industry. Someone, probably a junior analyst who couldn't believe what they were seeing, shared the internal numbers with a sports business journalist. Within 24 hours, the figures were everywhere, and they were staggering. In just 72 hours, Alex Eala branded merchandise had generated more revenue than some established top 20 players earned in an entire quarter. Let that sink in. A player barely inside the top 200 was outselling Grand Slam semifinalists. Her headbands alone moved more units than signature collections from athletes with 10 times her ranking. One particular training jacket, a simple navy design with gold accents, sold 40,000 units in Southeast Asia before anyone in Europe or North America even knew it existed. The comparisons were inevitable and brutal. Eala's 3-day merchandise surge eclipsed what certain former Grand Slam champions were moving in a month. Sports business analysts scrambled to explain it. Was this a fluke? A temporary spike driven by social media hype that would disappear as quickly as it arrived? Or was this evidence of something seismic, a fundamental shift in where tennis consumption power actually resided? Social media became the accelerant. TikTok videos of fans unboxing their Eala gear went viral, each one generating thousands of views and inspiring more purchases. Instagram stories showed teenagers from Jakarta to Bangkok styling their outfits around Eala's signature look. Twitter threads analyzed her fashion choices with the same intensity usually reserved for Grand Slam post-match interviews. Fan accounts dedicated entirely to tracking her outfits gained tens of thousands of followers overnight. But here's what the numbers really reveal. The tennis market had been looking in the wrong direction for years. While brands obsessed over American and European markets, pouring resources into players who appealed to traditional tennis audiences, an entire region had been ignored. Southeast Asia represented over 600 million people, young, digitally connected, economically ascending, and desperate for athletic role models who looked like them, spoke their languages, understood their journey. Alex Eala wasn't just a tennis player to these fans. She was proof that someone from their part of the world could compete on the global stage. Proof that you didn't need to come from Florida or Barcelona to make it in tennis. Proof that their dreams weren't ridiculous, and they were willing to open their wallets to support that representation. The merchandise sales became a statement. Every purchased headband was a vote. Every shared photo was a declaration. We matter. Our markets matter. And you've been ignoring us for too long. The economic power of that collective voice was undeniable. Retailers who'd never stocked tennis gear before were suddenly requesting Eala products. E-commerce platforms were creating dedicated sections for her merchandise. Regional brands that had taken small risks on her were now sitting on gold mines, and the major brands, they were frantically recalculating everything. Nike had built its tennis empire on champions: Serena, Federer, Nadal, Sharapova. Adidas had its own legacy roster. But legacy didn't matter if you missed the future. And the future, apparently, spoke to Galag, Indonesian, and Thai. The future wasn't waiting for permission from traditional tennis gatekeepers. The future was buying Alex Eala training jackets at 2 in the morning and posting about it with pride. One marketing executive, speaking anonymously to a trade publication, admitted what everyone was thinking. We completely misread the room. We've been chasing the same demographic for 20 years, while an entirely new market was forming right under our noses. And a 20-year-old from Manila just taught us that lesson in the most expensive way possible. The numbers had spoken. The question now was, who would respond first? And respond they did, because within 48 hours of those numbers going public, the scramble began. The emergency meeting was called on a Thursday afternoon. Nike's tennis division executives gathered virtually, connecting from Portland, London, Shanghai, and Melbourne. The agenda had one item: Alex Eala, or more specifically, how Nike had somehow allowed a potential gold mine to develop right under their noses, without securing her signature. Nike doesn't panic easily. They've weathered controversies, market shifts, and competitive threats for decades. But this was different. This wasn't about reacting to a competitor's move. This was about missing something fundamental, a market shift they should have seen coming. And in the cutthroat world of sports marketing, missing an opportunity like this doesn't just cost money, it costs credibility. The internal discussions were intense. How had their scouting system failed to identify Eala's commercial potential? The metrics were all there in retrospect. Her social media engagement rates were phenomenal. Her follower growth in Southeast Asian markets had been exponential. Regional media coverage of her matches was extensive, but Nike's analytics had been calibrated for traditional markets. Traditional metrics. They'd been measuring the wrong things. Within 72 hours of the sales data leak, Nike made its move. Representatives reached out to Eala's management team. The initial conversations were exploratory, feeling out her current contractual situation, her openness to partnership discussions, her long-term career vision. But everyone involved knew what this really was: Nike trying to course-correct before the situation spiraled further out of control. The proposed deal was aggressive: multi-year contract, signature apparel line designed specifically for Southeast Asian markets, guaranteed minimum payments regardless of ranking, bonuses tied to merchandise sales, rather than just tournament performance. Nike was essentially offering to bet on her commercial appeal, rather than her tennis results, a radical departure from their traditional athlete partnership model. But Nike had a problem. They weren't the only ones making calls. Word of Eala's merchandise phenomenon had spread through the entire sports marketing industry. And where there's blood in the water, competitors circle fast. The timeline became everything. Nike needed to move quickly. but not so quickly that they appeared desperate. They needed to craft an offer compelling enough to preempt competitors, but structured in a way that protected their investment if the Eala phenomenon turned out to be temporary. It was a delicate balance, and every day they deliberated was a day another brand could swoop in. Behind the scenes, Nike was also doing damage control. Marketing teams were scrambling to understand the Southeast Asian consumer. Focus groups were organized in Manila, Bangkok, and Jakarta. Cultural consultants were brought in to explain what they'd meant. There was a genuine reckoning happening, an acknowledgement that their Eurocentric and American-focused approach had blinded them to massive opportunities elsewhere. Some within Nike argued for caution. What if Eala's sales numbers were an anomaly, driven by nationalist fervor that would fade once the novelty wore off? But the counter-argument was compelling. Even if her commercial appeal eventually declined, the cost of not trying would be worse. Because if Nike passed and Eala became the superstar her fans believed she could be, they'd be locked out of the most dynamic emerging market in tennis. The pressure was immense. Nike's tennis division couldn't afford another misstep. They'd already faced criticism for how they'd handled certain athletes, for being slow to adapt to changing athlete empowerment dynamics. Missing Eala entirely would be devastating. So they pushed forward, crafting proposals, arranging meetings, trying to position themselves as the obvious choice. But they weren't alone in this fight, not even close. Because while Nike was scrambling internally, their biggest competitor was already making moves. Adidas had been watching. While Nike panicked and scrambled, Adidas took a different approach, calculated, strategic, and perhaps even more aggressive. They'd learned from past mistakes. They'd lost bidding wars before by being too conservative, too slow to recognize shifting market dynamics. They weren't about to let that happen again. Adidas's advantage was perspective. They'd already invested heavily in emerging markets, particularly in Asia. They understood the demographic shifts, the rising purchasing power, the hunger for representation. When the Eala sales numbers broke, their reaction wasn't surprise. It was validation. This was exactly the kind of athlete market alignment they'd been predicting. They just hadn't expected it to manifest so dramatically, so quickly. Their outreach to Eala's team was immediate and bold. Adidas wasn't interested in exploratory conversations. They came with a fully formed offer, complete with proposed contract terms, marketing campaign concepts, and a regional rollout strategy specifically designed to capitalize on her Southeast Asian appeal. They'd done their homework. They knew her style, her values, her fan-base demographics, and they farfetched their pitch accordingly. The Adidas proposal was compelling in ways Nike's wasn't. Where Nike offered a signature line, Adidas offered creative control. Where Nike promised marketing support, Adidas promised co-design opportunities. They weren't just offering to sponsor Eala. They were offering to build a brand with her, to make her a genuine partner, rather than just another athlete in their stable. But Adidas also played the strategic game. They leaked, carefully, deliberately, that they were in serious discussions with Eala. Sports business journalists started publishing speculative pieces about a potential partnership. Social media buzzed with rumors. The leaks served multiple purposes. They pressured Nike to accelerate their timeline. They built public anticipation that would make an eventual deal announcement more impactful. And they signaled to other brands that Adidas was serious. The bidding war was now public, even if the specific numbers remained confidential. And once it became public, everything intensified. Other brands that had been watching from the sidelines suddenly wanted in. Puma started making inquiries. New Balance, trying to expand their tennis footprint, saw an opportunity. Even non-traditional tennis brands recognized that Eala represented something bigger than just tennis. She represented access to a consumer base they desperately wanted to reach. For Eala's management team, the situation was both exciting and overwhelming. A few months ago, they were working with regional brands and hoping for eventually landing a mid-tier endorsement deal. Now they had multiple billion-dollar companies competing for her signature. The leverage had shifted entirely in their favor. Negotiations became complex. Each brand tried to differentiate their offer. Nike emphasized their global reach and tennis legacy. Adidas highlighted their commitment to athlete empowerment and creative collaboration. Smaller brands offered equity stakes and profit-sharing arrangements. The financial terms escalated rapidly, each proposal trying to outbid the others, while maintaining some semblance of rational business logic. But this wasn't just about money. Eala's team understood that the right partnership could define her career trajectory. The wrong one could commodify her story, alienate her fan base, or lock her into arrangements that didn't reflect her values. They needed to choose carefully, and the brands knew it. Adidas made one particularly savvy move. They arranged for Eala to meet with some of their other Southeast Asian athletes. Not tennis players, but athletes from other sports who'd successfully navigated similar partnerships. The message was clear. Adidas understood her unique position, valued her perspective, and wanted to build something authentic rather than just exploiting a market trend. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Fans on social media debated which brand she should choose. Sports analysts predicted which partnership made the most business sense. Regional media covered every rumor, every meeting, every leaked detail. Alex Eala had become the most sought-after unsigned athlete in tennis, maybe in all of sports. And through it all, one question lingered. What did Eala herself actually want? But while brands fought over contracts, something even more significant was happening with her fans. The brands were so focused on their bidding war that they almost missed the bigger story unfolding right in front of them. This wasn't just about Alex Eala's commercial appeal. This was about an entire region of fans realizing they had economic power, and they weren't afraid to use it. Southeast Asian tennis fans had spent years on the margins. They'd wake up at ridiculous hours to watch Grand Slam matches featuring their favorite players. They'd buy merchandise that was rarely designed with them in mind, often through complicated international shipping arrangements. They'd followed tennis passionately despite being largely ignored by the sports marketing machine. And now, suddenly, they were the market everyone wanted. The Eala phenomenon became a rallying point. Fan groups coordinated purchasing campaigns, deliberately buying her merchandise in bulk to send a message to brands. We exist, we spend money, and you can't ignore us anymore. Social media campaigns using hashtags like Eala Effect and SEA Tennis Fans trended globally. Fans created elaborate content, highlight videos, photo compilations, analysis threads, all designed to amplify Eala's visibility and commercial appeal. But it wasn't just about supporting one player. It was about demanding systemic change. Fans started pressuring tournament organizers to schedule matches at times more accessible to Asian audiences. They called out brands that ignored Southeast Asian markets while expecting those same fans to buy products marketed to Western consumers. They demanded representation in commentary teams, in promotional materials, in the sports governance structures. The economic impact was undeniable. Streaming platforms noticed significant viewership spikes from Southeast Asian markets whenever Eala played. Tournament broadcasters saw engagement rates that rivaled matches featuring top 10 players. Sponsors took notice. If Eala could drive this kind of attention and engagement now, what would happen when she broke into the top 100? The top 50? If she won a WTA title? Some traditional tennis observers dismissed it as hype. They argued that regional fandoms always burn bright initially, before fade. They pointed to other players who'd experienced similar surges without sustaining long-term commercial success. But those critics were missing the point. This wasn't about one player's individual trajectory. This was about an entire market segment asserting itself. Fan testimonials told the story better than any market research could. One young fan from Indonesia posted, "For years we've been invisible to tennis. We love this sport, but it doesn't love us back. Alex changed that. When I wear her headband, I'm not just supporting her. I'm telling the tennis world that we belong here too." That sentiment, repeated thousands of times across different platforms in different languages, captured something profound. The fan revolution also created unexpected challenges. With great economic power came great scrutiny. Fans became protective of Eala, almost possessive. They debated which brand partnership would be acceptable, which would be seen as selling out. They criticized media coverage they deemed disrespectful or dismissive. They defended her fiercely against any perceived slight, sometimes taking that defense to aggressive extremes. Eala herself seemed to understand the responsibility she carried. In interviews, she spoke carefully about representing not just the Philippines, but the broader Southeast Asian region. She acknowledged the weight of expectations while trying to maintain focus on her tennis development. She knew that every decision, what she wore, who she partnered with, how she presented herself, would be analyzed and debated by millions of invested fans. The brands were learning this too. Any partnership with Eala would come with intense scrutiny from a fan base that felt ownership over her success. They couldn't just slap a logo on her and call it a day. They'd need to respect the cultural significance she represented, honor the community that had elevated her, and deliver products and marketing that genuinely served those markets, rather than just extracting profit from them. This was the hidden complexity behind the bidding war. It wasn't just about signing an athlete. It was about earning the trust and loyalty of an entire emerging market. And one wrong move could turn millions of potential customers into vocal critics. The stakes couldn't be higher for Eala. for the brands, and for the future of tennis marketing itself. And then, just when everyone thought the situation couldn't get more intense, the announcement came. The deal was announced on a Tuesday morning Manila time, strategically scheduled to hit when her core fan base would be most active online. Alex Eala had chosen her. The financial terms remained confidential, but industry insiders estimated the deal's total value in the millions, with performance bonuses that could push it significantly higher. More importantly, the partnership included elements that no standard endorsement deal typically offered: creative collaboration, regional market focus, and clauses protecting her ability to represent causes important to her community. The reaction was immediate and intense. Social media exploded with celebrations, analyses, and inevitable criticisms. Some fans praised the choice as perfect. Others questioned whether she'd chosen the right brand. Sports business analysts dissected the deal's structure, trying to understand its broader implications. Competitors issued carefully worded statements congratulating Eala while privately reassessing their own market strategies. But the real significance of the phenomenon extended far beyond one endorsement deal. What had happened over those few weeks represented a fundamental shift in how sports marketing would need to operate going forward. The traditional model, identify champions, invest heavily, market primarily to Western audiences, had been exposed as incomplete at best, obsolete at worst. Brands were now scrambling to understand markets they'd ignored for decades. Scouting departments were being reorganized to track emerging talent in regions previously considered peripheral. Analytics systems were being recalibrated to measure engagement and commercial potential beyond traditional metrics. Cultural consultants were being hired to help navigate markets that required more nuanced understanding than simple demographic data could provide. Tennis itself was changing too. Tournament organizers were reconsidering scheduling to accommodate Asian viewership. Broadcasters were investing in commentary teams that could connect with diverse audiences. The sports governing bodies were facing pressure to ensure their structures reflected the global nature of their audience rather than just its historical power centers. For other young players from underrepresented markets, the Eala effect was inspirational but also daunting. She'd proven that commercial success didn't require conforming to traditional expectations or appealing to markets, but she'd also raised the bar impossibly high. How could anyone replicate that kind of organic, explosive fan mobilization? Was Eala a template or an anomaly? The brands that had missed out on Eala were already searching for the next one. Who else was developing a passionate regional following? Which emerging markets showed similar patterns of fan engagement and purchasing power? The hunt was on for the next athlete who could unlock a previously untapped consumer base. In some ways, Ayala's success had made the competition for young talent even more intense. Critics warned about potential exploitation. Would young players from emerging markets now be pressured into commercial partnerships before they were ready? Would the focus on mortability overshadow athletic development? Would brands treat these athletes as mere vehicles for market access rather than as individuals with their own aspirations and values? These were legitimate concerns that the industry would need to address. But there was also something genuinely hopeful about what had happened. An athlete from a country with limited tennis infrastructure had leveraged her talent, authenticity, and the passionate support of her community to secure opportunities typically reserved for Grand Slam champions. She'd done it without compromising her identity, without conforming to narrow expectations of what a marketable athlete should look like or sound like. She'd proven that representation matters, not just culturally, but economically. The full impact of the Eala phenomenon would take years to fully understand. Would her commercial success translate to sustained on-court achievements? Would the brands that invested in her see returns that justified their faith? Would other athletes successfully replicate her model? Would tennis truly become a more globally inclusive sport, or would this moment fade into historical footnote? Nobody could predict the answers with certainty, but one thing was clear: the sports marketing world would never look at emerging markets the same way again. The algorithm had been broken, the playbook had been rewritten, and a young woman from the Philippines had forced billion-dollar brands to scramble, reconsider, and ultimately acknowledge a truth they should have recognized long ago. The world was bigger than they'd imagined, and the future of sports belonged to whoever could see that clearly. Nike and Adidas learned an expensive lesson: ignore emerging markets at your own peril. Alex Eala didn't just sell merchandise. She exposed the blind spots of an entire industry and gave voice to millions of fans who'd been waiting for someone to represent them. Whether she becomes a Grand Slam champion or not, she's already changed the game forever. The question isn't whether she deserved the hype. The question is, who else are we still not seeing? If this story opened your eyes to how sports marketing really works, Hit that subscribe button. We're diving deep into the controversies, the drama, and the untold stories that changed tennis forever. Drop a comment. Do you think the brands made the right move? Or did they just get caught chasing hype? Let's talk about it.